Stop podcast surfing. You're in the right place. I've always wanted to sing. Hi, everyone. I am your host, Kimbralon B. I'm a licensed counselor, but I'm not your counselor. And I'm also the host of Good Tea and Reads. So I created Good Tea and Reads so we could use everyday topics, issues, and current events to explain the importance of mental health awareness. Most mental health discussions are so important because so many people suffer in silence or do not realize that they're dealing with mental health issues because of stigma, society, and family expectations, and other reasons. Some episodes on Good Tea and Reads are heavy and will make us think. Other episodes will be very enlightening or refreshing. But either way, you will have an awesome experience. Here's the disclaimer. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not a substitute for seeking professional care from another professional. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not meant to diagnose the subjects or persons discussed on this podcast. Also, any information shared on this show is for conversational, inspirational, and educational purposes as well. So, all right, this intro is long enough. All right, so go grab your cups really quick. Go, 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 go. So I can pour this piping hot tea. Meet me inside on this episode in 1, 2, 3. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Good Tea and Reads. I am your host, Kimbralon B. Hey, everyone. How are you doing? How is that self-care homework coming along? I would love to hear about it because I know you probably thought I forgot about it. And those that are just now listening today, you're going to have to go back and listen to the episode on self-care and accountability, right? If anyone would love to share what they did for self-care, please feel free to email me at goodteaandreads@gmail.com. All right, everyone. So today our episode is called, drum roll please, boom, 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 boom. Y'all, I don't have drum rolls. I don't know how to work my sound effects either. It's called The Tea on Change. And I decided to talk about change because change is something that when we talk to others about, we're like, change is good. Change is for the better. You can learn from change. And we're like, yes, yes, we can. Yes, I will. But honestly, when we are presented with change, normally we don't take it in like that. Normally, change just catches us. It's like when you get up in the middle of the night and you trying to find that water. See, let me tell you something. When you get a little bit mature, I don't like to say older because I'm right there. Somehow when you sleep, you get thirsty in the middle of the night. You may or may not have your thermos on the nightstand like I sometimes have, and sometimes I forget, and I don't know where my thermos is at. I have to get up in the middle of the night. Here I am walking, looking for my thermos, and then, dang it, it's not in the room. So now I got to go look in the next room. Now I have to venture out of the bedroom. I half sleep, and I'm on a mission to find that water because I need to drink water in the middle of the night. And then the next thing you know, after that, you be going to the bathroom, but that's neither here or there. But anyway, when you're walking around in the dark, next thing you know, you done hit your shin on the table. And boy, I remember when Cedric the Entertainer said that, you just want to lay down and die. And you do. That hurts. Well, think about that feeling, how that hurts. Sometimes when we're presented with change, that's how change can catch us right in the shin. So I decided to talk about change today as my topic because, as usual, I had a show planned, but life got to life, and y'all. And so instead of talking about that other topic, here we are, we're talking about change. So now, without further ado, we getting ready to go into story time about how the topic of change came to be. So, I'm transparent with you all because I feel like I'm really close to you all and I feel like I can be transparent. So, remember, everyone, that I am human first and therapist second. So, I'm not perfect. I have my quirks, right? I'm working through my stuff, okay? Don't let me get a bad reputation out here in the streets because I am sharing with each and every one of you all. Okay. So, one thing about me, I am very impulsive. Like, I will just go out and just buy something. If I see it, like it, buy it. Just very impulsive. And then after I buy it, I'm like, oh, why did I do this? And let me tell you, my return game is strong, and it shouldn't be. If I brought something I had no business buying, I will take that thing right back to the store. And my hubby, he hates when I do that, but I will do it in a minute and don't even care, right? So I was talking to my friend earlier this week, and I was talking about, I'm at a mature age, almost close to retirement. And I said, I really need to get my affairs in order. I can't keep doing this impulsive buying of things, right? Y'all, I'm not a baller, so don't think I'm a baller and don't try to find me and rob me. It ain't that type of party. And also don't ask me at Good Tea and Reads if I can let you borrow money because I ain't got it like that. When people are impulsive, that usually means that they budget is real tight, okay? I'm joking. But anyway, so I was just talking to my friend about setting these goals. Man, I was sounding good, y'all. I had these goals set because I'm trying to work this way. I want to be able to have just a smooth, life once I stop working, right? And so I knew with creating these goals, one thing that I had to do was stop this impulsive buying, right? And so I told my friend, I'm like, I'm not going to buy. I'm going to stick to this goal. This is the second half of the year. I want to start working on this, yada, yada, dee, all of that. So after I think I had that conversation with her maybe 2 days ago, 48 hours later, y'all, look, I done went out and made a major purchase. Boom, want it, see it, got it. Oh, this was great. Everything was in the cards. And I was so excited that I made this purchase until I woke up the next day and I was like, why did you do that? You just talked about doing this. Why did you go out and make this purchase? So now I attempted to take the purchase back. And I was like, look, I changed my mind. This is against my goals. I don't want the purchase. Plus, I didn't even bring the purchase with me. The purchase was still there. And they were like, we're sorry. You've already signed for the purchase. And the purchase is yours. And I'm like, tis tis. I didn't take the purchase. And so they like, haha, you signed for it. And I'm like, uh-uh. So anyways, that's how our conversation was going. But anyway, I changed my mind about the purchase. But now I'm having to thug it on out now because I'm not going to continue with that major purchase. And they seem to think I am. So more to come on that, y'all. But anyway, that's what inspired my topic of change because I did change my mind. But when you change something, there is an emotion that's connected with that. And that's why we're going to talk about change because change does impact mental health, right? All right. Okay. So I was going to bombard you with the definitions of change, but I decided to segue from that. Please use Google if you need a definition, but I think a majority of us are familiar with change and what change looks like, but I just want to talk about the mental health aspect of change. But what I will say about change is that change is like that constant homie in your life, that ace coon boon, your right hand man, the BFF. You know, I just thought about Ace Coon Boon. When I was in school back in the days, Ace Coon Boon mean like that was your friend, right? I think Kendrick talk about it, are we friends? Are we locked in? That's Ace Coon Boon back in the days, okay? But change is that constant companion that's with you everywhere you go when life be life and while you going through life, right? Where if you're doing things new, change is there. Change is right there saying, come on in. Come on in and have a seat at the table, right? So change is right there. Change also presents those opportunities for growth. Ideally, we grow through change one way or the other, right? We either grow with bad behavior because we don't know how to respond to change, or we grow with good behavior when we learn the steps on how to embrace change. And self discovery. Once you realize how change impacts you, regardless of the situation, you will learn what strategies work for you that'll help you navigate the way you feel and navigate your mental health when you're faced with change. Okay. And as I mentioned, even with my major purchase or when you think about change, change often manifests itself in the form of challenges. Haven't you noticed change just doesn't come, yay? When you get to work, sometimes you don't get that message like, Kimberlon, you've been working here for 4 years hard, and you're here day in and day out. We're going to give you a raise. You don't get met with those type of change. The type of changes you get met with is that you're performing below 60%. So we're going to have to put you on an action plan to help you change. That's the way you find out about change. Sometimes it's never in a happy moment. It's always in the midst of challenge, right? And I know I tied that to something negative per se, but also if you think about change, and when I said embraced with challenges, that change may be attached to if you get another job, right? You've had a job before, you know that system, you know the people, and then once you change jobs, you have to learn a new system and you have to learn how to work with new people. So change, when it meets us, it becomes our homie, our ace coon boon, our friend, and change is definitely locked in, right? And it can push us beyond our comfort zones. So there was an article on Psychology Today, and the article said this, and I want to read it word from word. As humans, we crave routine and predictability. Sometimes we even hold on to situations that no longer serve us simply because they are familiar. I got to read that one more time, just in case you went to go get your piping hot tea. Sometimes we even hold on to situations that no longer serve us simply because they are familiar. Yet the reality is that staying within the bounds of what is comfortable does not allow us to reach our full potential. So even though we don't like how we feel or what we're up against when we are presented with challenges, those challenges, if we learn the strategies to navigate it and how to embrace it per se, it will help us reach our full potential. All right. So let's talk a little bit about that again because that was really profound, especially where the article shared about us being humans that we crave routine and predictability. We do. We like routine. We like to be set in a routine. We go to bed at night. We plan to sleep for some people 8 hours. I tell you, unfortunately, me, I'm at 4 to 6. I'm trying to make my way back to 8. But when we go to sleep, we want to sleep, right? I mean, that only makes sense. What else, are we doing if it's sleep time, okay? I know you're probably thinking there's a ton of things you could be doing, but I'm just talking about, for all intent and purposes, sleep. If I put my head on my pillow, I want to sleep. I'm trying to sleep. Next thing I know, there's a dog that's barking. I hear it constantly. And it keeps me up at night. That is messing up my routine. Every time I talk about, like, when you get up in the morning, start your day off right. You got the Keurig set to percolate that coffee at 6:45 a.m. and you go in there and apparently there was a storm in the middle of the night and your Keurig is blinking. So no coffee is percolating and you about to have a full come apart. But and these things can actually throw us off because our routine is what we're used to doing at work, what we're used to doing. I'm in the people teaming business. That's what I like to call it, being a counselor. And so, even though I work with different people who have different presenting problems that they're wanting to work on, ideally, I know what my day is supposed to look like. But if I have a day where someone missed an appointment because they may have experienced a crisis, or they may encounter a crisis while we're in our meeting, or I get some unfortunate news about them, that can interfere with my routine and my predictability, and it can actually throw me off. Um, so I read that second sentence twice about sometimes we even hold on to situations that no longer serve us because they are familiar. This here is so huge. We do hold on to things because of that routine and predictability, because we're used to how it feels. Unfortunately, that even means if it's something that's not healthy for us, it could be a super unhealthy relationship. Some people wonder why, when people are in domestic violence situations, why they don't leave, right? It's easier said than done. That's like a entire episode by itself. But some people don't leave, one, because they're scared, or two, because they don't have a plan, or three, they feel that their abuser is going to harm their family, or them for that matter. But also, there's a reason that some people stay in unhealthy relationships as well, which is tying into change. So the reason they stay is because they are familiar with that situation. And you're probably like, well, what does that mean? Are you saying that they're used to being abused? No, I'm saying that they know what to expect. I know that sounds horrible. Really, it's not demeaning to anyone that's in those situations, or anyone that's escaped the situation, or to people that speak on the situation. I really do need to talk about this topic, though, because I think it would help with some of the victim shaming and blaming that goes along that people may or may not be aware about. But pulling it back into the story, They're familiar with that situation. Unfortunately, even though it's unhealthy, they know what to expect, they know what to say and not say. So if they are removed from that situation, even though it's unhealthy, um, and there's this sense of calmness, they don't know, is the calmness going to be there? What does that look like? And it could bring a level of fear. But yeah, some people just stay with that because we don't like change. Remember, we like routine and predictability. So even if it's unhealthy or it doesn't serve us a purpose, we'll hang out there because it's like we become complacent at that point because I'm finally at a place that I can navigate, or I feel like I can navigate, because really you may or may not be navigating that situation even though you're used to it. Um, and its last part is, yet the reality is that staying within the bounds of what is comfortable does not allow us to reach our full potential. And that is 100% true. When we are complacent, remember, it's kind of like being stuck, right? Somebody could be on a job for 20 years that may not necessarily be complacent. They may be fulfilling whatever goal that they have. They may have reached their full potential. But I want to say, and I want to stress, staying in a routine where you're not faced with any challenges or anything to challenge you or challenge your mindset, you will fall into that place of complacency. And if you get to that place, you may not decide to have any goals um, for your life or even set any goals. People may ask you, well, how do you see yourself in 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, tomorrow? And you may not be able to answer because you're okay, or I shouldn't say you're okay, I should say that you're settled at staying in that place. So change does actually shake us up a little bit, help us learn who we are, and help us navigate into those new territories. So this is what we're going to focus on when we're talking about embracing change. Let me throw a disclaimer about embracing change. So when we talk about change, I just said not all change is good. Change is this. Change can be anyway. Anyway, anyhow, whatever. When I say embrace, I'm not saying, hello, come here, change. Oh, give me a hug. I'll stay with you forever. You are the best. No, I'm not saying embrace it that way. Embracing is kind of like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with right now at this point. How do I move forward? So that's what embracing looks like, okay? Um, Pretty interesting segue that I have right here about change. So I wanted to talk about change, and then something appeared to me in my head, and I was like, what? Sorry, y'all, I had to drink a little water. Um, so I was talking about change, and all of a sudden the serenity prayer came. And look, I'm not getting into no religious spiritual debates or anything, but the serenity prayer came, and I thought that it was pretty neat. I'm just pulling out some of the core message to help us deal with change, because every time I think about change, I go back to the serenity prayer. And I know you can find it at different places. And if anybody has attended like Alcohol Anonymous, they really build their foundation on the serenity prayer. So I'm going to go through it. And again, I just took out the core piece because I want to take the core piece of and tie it into change and how change impacts mental health. So here we go. It's this may sound very familiar to a lot of you out there. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. And I just want to use that core piece. So, this message actually that I took out, or the Serenity Prayer as a whole, actually emphasizes the importance of distinguishing what is within our control and what is not, and finding the strength to accept what's not in our change, and then the strength to make the necessary changes in our life if we have the power to make that change within our being. And so we're going to go back through the Serenity Prayer, and we're going to break it down, and then we'll get back to the mental health piece. So, where it says, grant me the serenity. So, serenity is kind of like peace. So, if you think about it, we got to be at a place of calmness or peace or a stable place that we can navigate what's going on. So we have to have the ability to grant ourselves, which means we got to have these strategies, right? Because life is life, and remember, changes are unexpected and they come out of nowhere and they will kick you in your shin. Always remember that with change. But I challenge you, listener out there, grant yourself the peace. You got to allow it. We can't expect to navigate change, and we're not willing to use any of the tools in our toolbox to navigate that change, right? I mean, I could say, here's a situation, change to it. And if you like, nope, not changing, not doing it, no way, no how, then it's not going to happen if you don't want it to happen. But you have to want it to happen at that place of peace, right? So you're able to find the right tool to address that change when you are faced with it. When your homie come up in your face, set tripping, that's the homie change. I don't want y'all thinking it's somebody else, and because y'all may have beefs with somebody out here in these streets. But when change comes your way, grant yourself the peace, meaning give yourself the peace to face that change. Okay, eyeball to eyeball. And it says to accept the things I cannot change. If you get into counseling, remember, counseling isn't just for bad things. Okay, I forgot I'm not on video yet. So I was doing like these air quotes when I said bad things. But so being able to accept the things, you have to be willing to accept what you can't change. So in counseling, going back to my point, because I really forgot what I was saying earlier, you would learn in counseling, again, that not everything is bad. And if you go to a counselor that works probably with CBT, a lot of them do, because that's like a common modality, and that's a therapy practice out there. They use the circle of control. So you have the small circle, it's small. Take one hand and make it into an O. That's the circle of control. So this circle represents everything that's in your control. And I'm going to use it this way. My actions, my decisions, my words, my feelings, the common word here, everyone, my. So that's what's in your control. Now, if we take our right hand and we open it into a large C, like a monster claw, and if we had two of those together, that big circle represent things that are outside of our control. And those things are someone else's decisions, someone else's actions, someone else's words, someone else's friends. See what I'm going with this? So everything that's in your control is what you have control over. once you grant yourself that peace, right? Everything that's in the big monster claw hands, if you put the two hands together, that big circle where it's somebody else's action, somebody else's words, that's stuff that we can't control. That person is controlling that. And sometimes we get it twisted, because I still do to this day, even though I know this. And I think because I've done this, what's in my control, that I can control the way they're going to respond. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Okay? So just know it doesn't happen that way. I remember, and I'll give you a quick example, because I almost said I remember. I'll give you a quick example. You listener, because you're listening to my show, I'm going to give you a $5 bill. Now, I feel like I'm doing a good thing because it could be tons of you out there. And I'm giving you $5 because I appreciate you listening to the show. Now, the big circle that's surrounding me, and if you need to Google it, feel free to Google the circle of control. If you can't find it, email me and I will send it to you. But anyway, outside in the big circle, things that's outside of our control, just because I gave you $5 doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be thankful. If we were in person, I may say, here's $5 for listening to Good 10 Reads. You may say, is that it? Is that all? This is nothing. You could have kept that. Now, if somebody said that to me, I would probably be really upset because I'm thinking I'm doing you, I almost said doing you a favor. Oh, y'all, I forgot I was doing this show. That's not true. That is not a reflection. Sorry. No, but no, in all seriousness, I felt like I was doing something good. Thank you for listening to the show. And I just wanted to give you $5. But me, because I gave you $5, I'm expecting for you to be happy. And you may be like, that's it? I don't want that. Right? And then I don't feel happy because, but I can't control how you respond to the $5 because I gave you the $5. So you get it? So we got to focus on what we can control. The challenge is with that also is that our little circle, remember the little O that we can make with our hand, the things that's in our control, we let the outside things control how we respond to stuff. Go figure. We let the outside influence us. And next thing you know, we're going off on something, or we're mad about something, or we're acting irrational, or we're getting into trouble somewhere, and it's not good trouble. No, we're getting into some serious trouble. Us having to remember, like, if it's in that little circle, that O that we can make, we have the ability to control everything within that circle. All right, moving on to the next part is the courage to change the things I can. The courage, us taking that step. Remember, if it's in that little circle, if we want to change it, we can change my thoughts, my actions, my words, my ... We can change that. And us believing that we can change that. Us, once we learn the strategies that we need in our toolbox to make those changes and learn how to embrace those changes, then we'll have the ability to make that change, to face that change. We could face it head on, right? I mean, we may not, it may be a bumpy ride, right? I don't want to say it's 100% guarantee that you're going to embrace this change and you're going to rock it. It may just take us up, down, all around, or whatever, but at least you still have the ability to manage your emotions and thoughts around it. All right. And to change those things, we can change those things. Us doing what we need to do to make those changes. But not only that, us also remembering, even though we've made the changes, they may or may not be received the way we think it should be received. And us being okay with that, or learning how to move forward from that if we're met with opposition. And then the other pieces, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we got to know when we're faced with changes, whether it's something that's outside of our control and we have to accept it, and then we have to figure out within our own circle, how are we going to proceed from here, right? That's wisdom. Instead of getting caught up, instead of responding in a harsh way, and instead of it impacting us, causing us anxiety, depression, so forth and so on, us having that wisdom to determine, if I have to accept it, okay, this is what it is. How can I move forward from here? I may not like it. I may not even like how it makes me feel, but how can I move forward from here? Or if there's an opportunity to change, how can I change it? What steps can I do? What if I'm faced with opposition? Do I have enough tools in my toolbox to handle that so I can handle it appropriately? Or if I can't, learning how to be able to step to the side, and take a couple of breaths. Remember, we still talking about using your coping strategies. Just because you doing one thing, like I need to figure out how to make this change and circle of control, doesn't mean I have to set my breathing exercises on the shelf because I can only do one technique at a time. No, you got all these tools in your toolbox and you take it everywhere you go. All right. So you have to have the wisdom to know the difference. And the way you have to have the wisdom to know the difference is that you have to grant yourself that peace or that stable place so you can be at a place where you can make the best decision. Can I change it? Or if I can't change it, how can I accept it and move forward from it? And it says living one day at a time. It's not easy. That's why I had to share this statement. This isn't easy. Sometimes it has to be one day at a time. Really, it may seem like the same situation spans over weeks, months, or whatever. But if you are met with a situation and you lost your control or you responded in such a horrible way, it's not a bad thing. If you recognize that, it's still a win. But now let's figure out what we could have done differently. And if you've messed up one day, there's always the next day. There's always the next hour. There's always the next minute to make it right. Right? Right. So just live that way. Don't say, oh, I messed up, I'm a failure, I have anger problems, and then you start rolling down this hill. No, don't do that. One day at a time. Clean slate. Hey, human first, let's get it. And we're going to start over again. Because I'm sure if you had a friend who probably didn't make the best decision and they told you, hey, I messed up, I'm silly, I'll never get this right. I'm sure if you're a good friend, which I feel that you're a good friend, listener, I just feel those vibes through this podcast. But no, in all seriousness, if someone came to you like that, you would probably be like, no, don't feel that way. Everybody make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Guess what? That same energy that you give to someone, give yourself that same energy, right? Okay, self, we messed up, but we got this. We don't have to stay at the same place. We can do this. I'm, bigger and better. Like, you can give yourself that same speech. Enjoying one moment at a time. Celebrating those small wins. If you've handled it right, just celebrate it. If you handled it right, but it ended wrong, or you may have lost it at the end, that's okay. Just think, I was able to realize I didn't handle that right. So just enjoy those moments, right? We are all a work in progress as we going through life. None of us get through a place that we can say we've arrived. We're doing everything right. No change is necessary from here on out until I leave from here. Nobody get to that place. Every day is a learning place. There is no expiration time on learning. Always remember that. And it says accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. We're back at the serenity piece. Accepting those challenges that come along your way, those tests. Again, we're not saying you're my very best friend. We're not saying that. I'm saying that we accept it and let's figure out how to navigate through it. I don't like it. I don't approve of it. But you know what? I'm just going to do this next step and then I'll just move forward from here, right? Accepting that as a pathway to peace. And it's such a good feeling, right? Again, you don't have to get it right. But once you start to get it right and you have those small wins, it actually feels really good at times if you just take advantage of that moment to just feel like, ooh, you know what? I didn't even cuss her out that time because I cussed her out 20 times before. But that day, she didn't even get cussed out. She better be glad that I'm changing. You celebrate that win, okay? And work on whatever you need to work on. So even though we talk about change, and I know I've painted this change, and when you're faced with change, you just see it, you pivot, you do this, embrace it. Even though we're talking about that, there is a component to change, right? When we're faced with it. And that being familiar, feeling familiar to our routines. Here's the change right here. The change to the change that interferes with the change is self-sabotage. Doom, doom, boom, boom. What the heck is self-sabotage, you may want to know? I'm glad that you asked. Okay? So self-sabotage during change is when things are going well. We feel like things is going well. Again, remember, when we start to embrace change, we are moving away from the routine and we're moving away from routines and predictabilities. Now we're moving into the unknown. Boom, 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 boom. And once we get in the unknown because we haven't felt this before, or we don't know what this feels like, or we're still waiting for that shoe to drop, we may be like, wait, the tape didn't stop. It's like, wait, it's too quiet. What's going on? I'm not having those thoughts anymore. It's weird. I don't hear anything. And because we feel like it's weird, now it's not comfortable. Now we're outside of our comfort zone. And because I'm so used to that chaos, I'm so used to that routine, I may actually call somebody up, one of my adversaries, and just start an argument with them so I can just self-sabotage myself so I can get back into that routine because it was too quiet when I was doing things the right way and using tools from my toolbox. So now I'm back, creating this chaos, or I'm back dealing with these emotions. Now I'm back to square one. So, yeah. So self-sabotage involves those behaviors, and they're conscious and unconscious. Sometimes we know that we're self-sabotaging. Sometimes because it's a part of our routine. You know how we go through our routine every day. Quick example. When I come to my podcast desk, I just sit down in my chair. I'm not checking my chair to see if my chair is going to hold me or is it going to fall apart. No, I'm not checking. I just sit down. That's a part of my routine. It's something that I do. It's an unconscious thing that I do. So self-sabotage can be unconscious as well. And it prevents individuals, that's you and me both, from achieving our goals. especially when these goals involve significant change, right? Going back to my major purchase that I was sharing with you all, right? I was just talking with my friend about goals, about following these goals and everything. Now, look, if you think about it, this could be self sabotage. Because I went out right after having that conversation 48 hours later and made a major purchase and shouldn't have and didn't need to. See what I'm saying? Self sabotage. And so here's some reasons for self sabotage. Maybe you can relate to some of them. Fear of the unknown, uncertainty. Change brings that unpredictability, just like I was sharing. And for many, that can be really unsettling, right? We feel like we don't have footing, we don't have a firm foundation because we're in this place of the unknown. Um, and it can be that way of avoiding a perceived threat. Like if I stay over here, something else worse may happen to me than if I was in this situation. So I might as well stay in this situation. So we'll return back to that situation, right? Self sabotage. Because we just want to deal with the familiar because we know what the familiar feels like. So, ironically, outside of the fear of unknown, the opposite is the fear of success. What? Yes, there is a such thing as a fear of success. People always say they want to be successful, and they do. Some know how to be successful. But again, if you've been at this place that you've been following goals, or you kind of been struggling with your goals, or you've been following your goals to a T, next thing you know, you're in this uncharted territory. So now it's like, what's next? When I get to that place, I followed my goals to a T. Now I'm at this place. What's next? This is weird. Oh my gosh, this is weird. I'm kind of nervous. Once I finish school, I'm going to have my degree. Then I'm going to find a job. Will I be able to do the job? And then you find yourself getting so worked up, you may self-sabotage to where you may start to fail that class. Or you may not even pursue a job in that field because of that fear of success. And one thing about fear of success or fear of the unknown or the uncertainty is it is tripping off the future. It's future tripping. And it's related to anxiety, right? It's just future tripping. And we like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, will I have this? Or what'll happen if? This is where counseling is really good at. Counseling or therapy, your choice on whatever discipline that you would like to see. Because your counselor or your therapist will work with you to get you through this uncharted territory. Because it is a fear of unknown, and it is a valid feeling because we don't know, and it is uncomfortable. But one thing about fear, and I'm going to throw this in as a freebie, is that you haven't made it there yet. If it's in the future, you're not there yet. So if you continue making steps towards that and just dealing with things as you go, you should be fine. But sometimes we leap and we skip and we go to the finish line and it's like, oh my gosh. So being mindful of that fear and learning how to navigate either that success or that fear of unknown or uncertainty. Low self-esteem is another reason people self-sabotage. If someone feels like they're not worthy of success or to be happy, they may unconsciously undermine their efforts to achieve it because they want to continue fulfilling that negative self-belief, right? I don't think I deserve that. I, somebody else can have it, or maybe somebody else would do better with that. And we just like throw it all away. We mentally throw it all away because we think that we're not worthy enough to have whatever that is. And so we'll self sabotage it. We'll say we don't want it. We'll do something to shy away from it. We'll say give it to somebody else because our self esteem is low. So that's another reason that we self sabotage. And that's definitely another reason where counseling or therapy will help you out with that. Because if we're, again, something like low self esteem, it probably is a part of our routine by now because we've carried it so long, if that's, what we're dealing with. So we're not going to know how to act once that's removed, or, we know how this feels. How will I feel once I start to feel confident? Because some people mix that with, if I become confident, then I'll become really arrogant, and I don't want to be arrogant. So now the self-sabotage is there again. So that's where counseling or therapy will help you out. You will learn strategies to actually overcome that. Um, Perfectionism is another reason for self-sabotage. Look, I'm going to do it 100. I'm going to do it 100. I'm doing it the first time, and I'm going to get it right. Right? I'm just perfect. I can't make any mistakes. I got to get it done. And next thing you know, it's like, I got to start over? What happened? I was following the steps. My boss wants to talk to me. I know I presented it. Where did I did it right. I'm not doing it again. I'm just not going to do it again. And then we start to self-sabotage that way. We may quit. We may not give it our all. We may let the next person in the next cubicle take on that project. And next thing you know, we're not getting called for anything, which means we probably won't be considered for a promotion, to other positions or in pay, because we're just going to sit there because we either go hard or go home. We don't go in between. We don't take the steps in between. So remember that with perfectionism. Um, Another reason for self-sabotage is the need for control. When feeling a loss of control due to an external change, an individual might self sabotage as a way to regain a sense of agency, even if that control leads to a negative outcome. So, if I feel like I need to take control and I'm working on a group project and we're spearheading it, and then somebody else joins the group and they have what I perceive as better ideas as me, or it seems like they coming from my spot, I'm supposed to be the leader of this group, not you. We all should know one in the workplace. I promise you, it's not me. And some people like taking control. That's it. But then if somebody else has an idea and everybody's like, hey, well, let's try John Doe's idea, then this main person may be like, you know what? They may mess it up. They may muck up the entire project on purpose. And so they can get back and say, well, see, you tried it John Doe's way. Now you going to know the right way to change it. So you come back over here and let's do it this way. It happens, y'all. It happens. If you're not working yet and you're still in school and you're listening to this, you've probably I've seen it on social media or on streaming channels before. I don't know how many people still watch like regular TV channels. I don't even have regular TV channels. I only have a streaming channels. Anyway. We've talked about comfort in the familiar, right? We want to I'm okay being here. I know what this feels like. I know the routines, going back to domestic violence situations. I know what to expect. I kind of know the abuser's trigger buttons. I know what to do, what not to say. I know to take these steps. And so if I leave this situation, I may not know how to respond to the next relationship. I may not know how to navigate. So I'm just going to stay here because at least I know those triggers. So we just stay in the familiar. Some of us stay in the same jobs because we're used to this. If I leave, I may not have my friends. I may not get those 15 coffee breaks that I get. Sorry. So I may not be able to work from home anymore, and I have to go into the office and I have to work 8 to 5. I can't be sitting here doing laundry, watching Netflix, and chilling throughout the day while I'm at work. Sorry, y'all. Hope I'm not telling on anybody. Another reason for self sabotage is unresolved trauma or past experiences. So, previous negative experiences can change, uh, and also can lead to those subconscious thoughts that sabotage future attempts to avoid repeating past pains, right? So I'm not going to move forward because there's a chance I may encounter that trauma or that pain again. So you just usually just settle out and just stay in that complacent spot and just deal with it because you don't know what's going to happen, right? So that's another reason why it's really important to get into counseling or therapy or talk to a mentor or someone that can provide that support, especially with unresolved trauma. Because if you don't talk to anybody about trauma, listeners, guess what? It's still unresolved, meaning there's no resolution to that trauma, which means you're still carrying that trauma. One thing about trauma is that it doesn't go away. It takes root. It's like those weeds in the yard. I mean, we're starting to see weeds now because it's hot. I mean, where I'm at, it'll probably just burn up soon. But trauma grows with you. It doesn't go away. Some people wonder why do I still feel these feelings like that? Unfortunately, with trauma, it takes root until you deal with that root. So if it's unresolved, it's going to stay unresolved. Some people say they don't like to talk about it because it hurts. Holding on to it hurts. I'm not encouraging you to go release and say all of this, but I'm just trying to give you these pointers because holding on to trauma hurts also. I mean, you're walking around with the pain day in and day out. And typically, when you start to talk about trauma, it hurts. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say it feels good talking about it. But it starts to feel less heavy if you're working through it along with a professional that can professionally guide you through it. That's what makes a difference. Because in counseling or therapy, whatever you want to call it, if you got you a good counselor or a good therapist, when you've talked about that trauma and you work through it, ideally they should have you back to a place of feeling good about today, even though you may have talked about some really heavy places. Because they should not be sending you into the world hurt and broken because you've opened up Pandora box. No, somehow they should give you the strategies and extra tools in that toolbox to help you navigate those emotions from talking about past traumas. And I always like to say today's troubles. That's what I call them. Today's test, I should call them. Because we got to be able to navigate our everyday life and address any past traumas. We don't want everything to be open because we'll be a hot mess express. Um, let's see. A lack of self-awareness. Some people aren't even aware that they sabotaging themselves. This is probably you as the listener's first time hearing about the possibility of self-sabotaging yourself when it's time to make those changes or what's stopping you from embracing change. Sometimes people aren't even aware that they sabotaging themselves. Your behavior at that moment may seem like it's the best choice at that moment. But the long term consequences, if you keep addressing things with that same behavior, it could be detrimental to your goals, to relationships, to whatever that you need to encounter. That it can actually happen. Um, so we talked a lot about, and there's probably other reasons out there. I wanted to just highlight a few. Let's talk about. I got this from Google, y'all. Remember, you can Google because I am a counselor, but I'm not your counselor. Let's overcome that self sabotage related to change. Doing some self reflecting when you have to make a change, or you notice that you're making a change, or you've been presented with a challenge. Identifying that reoccurring patterns of behaviors that prevent your progress. What happens just before you self sabotage? What happens? What emotions are you feeling? Setting realistic goals. Sometimes we set big old goals. People set big goals, and I encourage people to set small goals because small wins are still progress. I've had people say that they want to lose weight. How much weight you want to lose? I want to lose 20 pounds in 30 days. Like, no, because I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible, but if you set a goal like that and you've only lost 11, you may give up because you didn't hit 20. But I mean, 20 probably wasn't a realistic goal in the first place. It's okay to say, in 30 days, I would like to lose 5 pounds. That's an achievable goal. And if you do more, you win. If you do less, identifying like what I could have done differently. Once we got our tools, I've said this throughout the show, your tools in your toolbox to be able to look at things. Remember, granting yourself that peace to accept the things that you cannot change, or the wisdom to know the difference, right? So you'll be able to take that step back and then figure out what you need to do in order to make those goals. Building that self compassion. Build your self compassion. Be kind to yourself, right? Especially be kind to yourself if you don't get it right. If you should stumble, if you don't make the best decision, if your behavior isn't the best. Try the next day, right? Remember, we like to reset. But what I do want to say at this moment, that again, we're not perfect, but I don't want you going out there intentionally making any mistakes either. You can't just keep cussing people out and thinking, okay, the next day I get to reset. Now, come on now. That ain't what I'm saying. That ain't how you get down, okay? You got to be able to make these changes, and you have to be diligent with it. I've talked about the toolbox all throughout this podcast. Carrying your toolbox with you. But in order for you to carry your toolbox, learning healthy ways to deal with that stress, that fear, and that uncomfortable feeling that comes along with change. That's the tools you need to have in your toolbox. Those breathing exercises. My circle of control, remembering what's in my control, and I can't control how somebody else responds. My mindfulness activities, my going on long walks or going on short walks, going to the bathroom, right? Sitting in the bathroom for 2 minutes, as long as it's not after lunch. I told y'all about sitting in the bathrooms after lunch. Ew. But you may want to go sit outside, walk outside, take 2 minutes. You don't need to take 30. And please, 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 one of the tools I do not want you putting in your toolbox is calling your friends, okay? If you're going to call somebody, you call somebody that's more like an accountability partner. Don't call Janie Sue that's going to ride with you. That's going to be like, you don't have to take that. That is not the type of tools you need in your toolbox. Now, I'm not saying that Janie Sue is not a good friend, right? Because everybody has their own whatever they bring to relationships. what I'm saying, if we're working on embracing change, Janie Sue may not be able to come, okay? Because Janie Sue gonna have you developing and putting out all the smoke, okay? And seeking support, I just want to encourage you again, please. If you don't have a good mentor or some supportive person, or if you feel pretty confident with Google, okay. But if not, I would encourage you to go see a counselor or a therapist, to learn those coping skills and coping mechanisms that you can use when you're met with change, or your change homie jump in your face wanting to try you. um, but seriously, remember this. I like to reduce the stigma around counseling or therapy. It's okay to go. You don't have to go because you crazy. You don't have to go because you have mental issues, because this is the stuff people say. You don't have to go when things are going bad. You can actually go and say, hey, I have problems dealing with change, and I just want to learn coping mechanisms, coping strategies to put in my toolbox. That's why I'm going. And your counselor or your therapist should be more than willing to work with you. Okay? So just remember that. That's what we're here for. It's not always bad. It's not always trauma. It's not always this. We are there to help with goal setting as well. So, change is good. Having the wisdom to deal with the change. But it starts with you. Always remember that. It starts with you granting yourself that permission to either accept it or finding the steps, the courage to navigate and deal with it. All right. I hope this helped you today. It really helped me. Y'all, I'm hoping that it's helping me with this major purchase issue. Anyway, I'll have to let you know how that goes next week. But with that being said, another reason I wanted to talk about change is I am so excited to be changing the name of the show. I was trying to think of what I could say that would be super fly. But one thing I like about doing this podcast and talking to people about my passion, and that's mental health awareness, watching people meet their full potential. Look at me, I'm just stuttering about it, but that's okay. It's okay. Just listen and don't judge. Is that I've encountered some pretty cool people, and I was talking about my show, and then I had a trusted friend say, hey, why don't you change the name of your show? And I was like, what? I thought Good Tea and Reads was fly. And they're like, well, it is fly, but I think you should change it to another name. And I was like, okay, now you're talking. Let's change it to another name. So I am excited and pleased to announce the name of my show will be highlighted next week with the next episode of mm, 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 previously known as Good Tea and Reads, is released. Surprise, surprise. I will unveil it next time, okay? On the next episode. So it will be beep, 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 formerly known as Good Tea and Reads, right? I'm still working on the branding and everything else. I'm really excited about the show, but in all fairness, again, embrace that change. I'm embracing the change. I have to let you all know what happened with this major purchase next week. Change isn't always happy. It could be sad. It can really be challenging, and it can meet us as challenging at challenging times, and it can also cause more challenges. And sometimes, even though we have tools in our toolbox, that may not be enough, unfortunately, to manage our emotions. So, with that being said, I want to encourage you that if you're down and out and you're not feeling okay, you can't seem to overcome your feelings, and you have this sense of sadness or a sense of feeling on edge or worry that seems to be uncontrollable. It's impacting your daily activities, such as working, taking care of your personal hygiene, or you're thinking thoughts of that the world probably would be better without you. Please call 988. And for immediate help, please call 911. Also, you can Google in your city if you're interested in getting connected with a counselor or a therapist. You can put looking for a counselor or therapist in whatever city and state you're in, and it should pull up that information for you. But please don't suffer in silence. Okay? Do not suffer in silence. Because remember, if we don't have the tools in our toolbox, we can't resolve anything either. So it's similar to unresolved trauma. If we don't have the tools, we don't have anything to challenge whatever thoughts that we're having and whatever emotions that we're feeling. So please, please, please. And you can still text 741-741. But whatever you do, just get connected to somebody. And always remember, if it doesn't work the first time, you can actually fire them and get somebody else that you feel compatible with, darling. Okay? So please remember that. I say that jokingly, but I am serious. I tell all my clients that if you don't like me, fire me. Okay? Get somebody that you can connect to, so you can have that experience. That is your experience. That is your moment. That is your step to changing what you can change in your life. All right, everyone. Until next time, when I debut, boop, 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 formerly known as Good Tea and Reads, I say goodbye. I was getting ready to sing, and I was like, ugh. But I say goodbye, and I'll talk to you next time on the next episode. You all have a good one. You hear? Bye.